I call Keith Locke.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Green Party will continue to oppose this legislation. It is very clearly anti-union legislation, and listening to the National Party speakers over some time in this Parliament around this legislation and the accompanying Holidays Amendment Bill, I've yet to hear any sign that they think unions are good, that unions should be promoted. I wish sometimes they would actually say that unions are good, that more people should join them. Instead, we have a bill that's limiting the power of unions, making it more difficult for people to join, to act effectively in a collective manner in their unions. And the basic fact of life is that unions are good for workers. And if you look at similar industries, the factories or offices that are unionised have better wages and conditions. That's the fundamental thing that happens, and that is a good thing. And there is sometimes a conflict of interest between unions and an employer. Some employers are good employers. Some employers, would rather pay as low wage rates as possible and get that little bit extra for themselves. Some employers think you don't need unions at all and will try and keep them out of the workplace. And we did see the government encouraging one particular set of employers in the film industry in what's now known as the Warner's bill, where effectively the Employment Relations Act was being excluded or written out of conditions for work in the film industry, so that any contracts that occur, the film industry management will say, well, hold on, you're all independent contractors, that you'll have to declare that when you sign this contract, and at that point the Employment Relations Act and all your rights as workers in a union sense no longer apply. So that is the sort of background to this legislation, and the trial period, the 90-day trial period, which is now universalised, will give more power to employers against workers and against members of the union, that is. And the Minister, in her first speech, didn't mention the fundamental. She said, I'll spend most of my time on the 90-day trial period, but she didn't mention the fundamental element of this trial period. That is, you can get sacked for no reason whatsoever, and the employer doesn't have to give any reason whatsoever. And she didn't mention whether, for example, in the state service, the government will be allowing unions to negotiate in their contracts that their members will be excluded from this 90-day provision. That is quite key, and I understand the government is doing the very opposite. It is telling the chief executives not to allow in the contracts an exclusion of this 90-day provision. So this whole talk that it's going to be voluntary and that unions can voluntarily exclude themselves from the 90-day provision is quite wrong. And will the government exclude contracts that say a condition for you getting this job, a worker comes up and wants to get a job, will they be able to sign a contract that doesn't have a 90-day provision in it, or will they be told a condition for you getting this job is that you have a 90-day trial period? Because if that's the case, then it's not voluntary. That is, particularly if the employers' federation, which is, I understand it's doing, is setting up model contracts that include a 90-day provision. You won't have a choice of going to a job with a 90-day provision or without a 90-day provision, particularly in a situation of growing unemployment. You'll be forced to have a 90-day trial where you can be dismissed at will without any reason given whatsoever. The Minister said that it doesn't apply to skilled workers. Well, why not? I'm sure there'll be employers who will say, I want a 90-day provision in the bill, possibly when they're hiring people from overseas. They'll say, well, I haven't seen this worker yet, I'm hiring them from the Philippines or China or somewhere on a work permit. I'll make sure there's a 90-day provision in so that they can be sacked. That's if I don't like them. But what does that mean for the migrant coming in who's shifting themselves or their family to the other side of the world to get the job in New Zealand? They won't have the possibility, they'll be a bit scared of taking up a job in New Zealand because they could be sacked within the first 90 days, and they'll probably trot off to Australia or somewhere like that, to the disadvantage of New Zealand in terms of skilled migrants coming here, and it will reduce labour mobility. There's no question of that. If you're in a job and you've got permanent employment, you've got the right to for a personal grievance. If you're sacked, then you're liable to stay in that job, even if there's a job down the road that's a bit better in terms of the skill and in terms of the money. Why risk getting sacked in the first 90 days? So it will be bad for the New Zealand economy in putting people in the right places and the workforce having the proper level of labour mobility. What this 90-day provision do is it demoralises people. It's demoralising to feel you've got no power on the job in the first 90 days because you can be sacked at will. It's demoralising if you are actually sacked, particularly with no reason given. It's demoralising if you know that on your work record, when you go to get another job after you've been sacked within the first 90 days for no reason, the employer will say, well, why were you sacked at the previous job? And there'll be you won't be able to say, so, well, don't know, the boss never told me, and under the law he didn't need to tell me. And there might be problems, and there will be problems for many of these workers getting benefits, that if the work and income decides that somehow, even though no reason was explicitly given to you, that somehow from their investigations or the employer or whatever else, they think that the employer had a case to dismiss you, you won't get a benefit. But there won't be any fairness around that process of the work and income determining. And then when the work and income sends you out to get a job, say, well, the condition of you keeping keeping on the benefit is at least you've got to try for this job, and this is a job with a 90-day trial period. So then it's not voluntary in that you have to go out and at least apply for that job with a 90-day trial period, otherwise you'll lose your benefits. So it's very bad in many ways. The provision on union access to make it is a provision for mucking unions around, so that the officials will spend half their time trying to get onto jobs rather than doing the work on the job they should. And I think we've found with the tragedy down in Pike River that the best form of industrial relations are where you have everyone working together. And as I understand it, the Pike River mine was a unionised site, the EPMU, and what you pick up from what's happening down there at the moment is that the union, the workers, the management, everyone is working together in a very cooperative way. The other lesson of Pike River, and this is no criticism whatsoever of anyone, is that whenever there's a tragedy, people think, well, health and safety, let's maximise that. It's important to always maximise that. And to have strong unions, to have unions working collectively together and working with the employer and alerting people to health and safety concerns is always a step forward and helps avoid disasters. And it helps that a confident workforce is always a better workforce. People are proud of their skills rather than being terrified of what might happen to them in terms of the relationship with the employer or 90-day periods or whatever else. And a confident workforce with a strong union requires reinstatement as the primary remedy as well, because the people who will be sacked and won't be reinstated under this provision will probably be the union leaders. That's what will happen. The company will say, well, I might have to pay a bit to the employment court for sacking this person, but at least I've got rid of the union leaders on the job, and perhaps I can get rid of the union altogether. This